Who's in charge of Zimbabwe? The embattled President Robert Mugabe is clinging to power and faces impeachment. Everyone but him seems to agree his time is up. So what's next for Zimbabweans desperate for change? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe has ignored a deadline to resign. His ruling ZANU-PF party had told him he must step down or be impeached. Now it says that process will begin. The party is accusing Mugabe of being responsible for political instability and an unprecedented economic tailspin. And that frustration is spilling onto the streets, with hundreds of students out protesting, demanding Mugabe get out of office. The powerful War Veterans Association is also demanding Mugabe step down and threatening High Court action to have him removed.
We want the whole population to descend upon Harare and give an unmistakable message that we want to see Mugabe's back. The country has to start on a new page. His rule has been disastrous, particularly the last 15 years. No country has been reduced to the level of depredation which Zimbabwe has gone through, worse than a country which has gone to a war, and is totally oblivious to the damage which he has been doing to the nation, because he's more preoccupied with indulging this coterie and his doting wife. That's what has been his business in Parliament, nothing else.
The crisis started earlier this month when Mugabe fired Vice President Emerson Mnangagwa, putting his wife Grace in prime position to take over as president. Mnangagwa's dismissal was the last straw for the army chief, who was his long-time ally. The military seized power on Wednesday, surrounding government buildings and putting Mugabe under house arrest. That led to extraordinary scenes in Harare on Saturday. Hundreds of thousands of Zimbabweans flooded the streets to celebrate the apparent end of his 37-year grip on power. On Sunday, the ruling ZANU-PF dismissed Mugabe as party leader and expelled his wife Grace. Mnangagwa was promoted to president of the party, whilst Mugabe was told he must step down or be impeached. The embattled leader was widely expected to resign hours later during a live TV address. Instead, he provoked anger and disbelief. Flanked by army generals, he vowed to stay on until ZANU-PF's party congress next month.
The congress is due in a few weeks from now. I will preside over its processes, which must not be prepossessed by any acts calculated to undermine it or to compromise the outcomes in the eyes of the public.
Well, let's bring in our discussion panel now. And joining us from Harare, Bright Matonga, a former government spokesman and Deputy Information Minister under President Mugabe. And from New York, Muna Ndulo, a professor of law and constitutional expert at Cornell Law School. Welcome, both of you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Inside Story. Bright Matonga, you are a former spokesman for President Robert Mugabe. Can you give us some insight into what's going through his mind at this point in time? He didn't resign in that speech on Sunday. It took many people by surprise. What happened?
He's a master of the art of politics. He wants to be in control of a lot of things. But I suppose if you have to be a president, that's how it has to be. But the issue now is he's been in power for 37 years. And he still wants to remain in power. He's 93 now. Next year, when we have elections, he'll be 94. So you have a 5-year term. And by the time that term finishes, he'll be 99. Excuse me. That's what people are saying. What is it that he wants to prove? Is he saying there's no one can, as long as he's alive, he's not prepared to have anyone to be a president? So, look, it's not a question of whether what goes into his mind, but again, it's about he wants to control everything. He thinks in his mind, because he's been so much in control before independence, after independence, that's more than 40-something years. So that is his lifestyle. So I think he's still finding it very difficult to comprehend beyond that. But the people of Zimbabwe have said, look, I think, thank you, Mr. Mugabe. You've done a lot of good things. You've done a lot of bad things. Who doesn't? So it's time to hand over the baton. So again, he says, no, I'll be there.
But Bright, who is supporting him? I mean, who is there telling him, encouraging him to stay the course?
Right. Right now it's very difficult because we don't know who is at his house. We don't know who is advising him. But I think he can't stomach a loss. He has to come on top all the time. He has to have a final say all the time. But I think now things are different. People are so angry, especially last night. People expected more. We expected him to do the right thing, to say, guys, I've heard you loud and clear. I think I need to take a break and give someone, the opportunity to take Zimbabwe forward. We don't have a currency of our own. Public debt is 40% of GDP. People are suffering, and the students, again, there's so much poverty. What this does, is kills families. Young girls are forced to go into prostitution to get money to sustain their livelihood. So things are getting bad. And if after now, who is going to come and invest in Zimbabwe? It's a very unstable economy. So people will just hold back, and it's 5 more years of suffering. And I think Zimbabweans, people said, no. I think you're taking us for a ride, and we want to prove to you that you can't hold the council to ransom. And people tomorrow are coming back again in their millions to say, I think you better move out. And the parliament, ZANU-PF recalled him and expelled about 10 or so senior party members who he has been working with.
Right. Just going to jump in there. And just one more to you before we go over to Muna there in New York. Just one more, because you're talking about the people having had enough and coming out onto the street. But it wasn't the people who finally moved to remove Mugabe. It was the army. The people have put up with a decade of economic stagnation and human rights abuses. So why did the army choose now to move?
Look, the army noticed that there was a vacuum. The police was infiltrated, so is the secret services. They were not working for the best interest of the country. So they spoke to him. They asked him to intervene. He didn't listen to them. They made a public announcement. And when the chief of the army said that, he also wanted to arrest him and fire him. Unfortunately, that couldn't happen. And the army said, Commander, we respect you. We've been with you in the trenches. It's a high time you have to listen to us. There's no police force. But the funny thing now, or the interesting thing at the moment is you can't see any policemen along the streets. And it's so peaceful, no looting, no crimes recorded. And people are just happy, and people are so united. So I think the army have said, we are the custodian of security of this country. It's better for you to do the right thing, control your people. If you can't, then we have to take the role of the police. That's why the war veterans today approached the High Court to say they support the actions of the army so that they fill that gap that has been left by the police force. Otherwise, there's going to be chaos, and people will destroy shops.
Let's bring in Muna now. Muna, what do you make of the way that the army is going about removing Mugabe? They're very keen to say this is not a coup. They're very keen not to have any bloodshed. But is it constitutional what's happening in Zimbabwe?
I think that the army has read the mood of the people rightly. Zimbabwean people, I mean, the problem of Mugabe has been there for quite some time, and things were deteriorating. And I think what you see the army trying to do is, of course, to try to use constitutional ways rather than go into a straightforward coup. And I think this is really in order to promote stability so that institutions remain in place. And I think what has happened is that for various reasons that have been enumerated by many people, Zimbabweans are no longer able to breathe under the regime now. So, and I think that to me, what Mugabe could do now is to really do service to the country is for him to step down so that there can be a new beginning. This is an opportunity to go forward and resolve the country's problems.
Clearly, Muna, there's after yesterday's speech where he didn't step down, there's not much hope that he is now going to. And ZANU-PF, his ex-party now, is talking about impeachment proceedings beginning on Tuesday. Just give us an idea of what needs to happen to get those proceedings underway.
I think that resignation would have been the easiest way out. This is provided for under Article 96 of the Constitution. So he would have resigned, and that would have been much, much easier. I think the impeachment process, as the party suggests, is the next process that can go on. The difficulty with that is that there's a process to it. In that you have to look at, I think, Articles 96, 97 to 99, and you find there that they would have first to table a motion before a joint sitting of the Senate and the Assembly, and then get a majority of the members supporting the motion. And after that, they have to appoint a committee that would have to look into the impeachment allegations, and there's specified grounds on which he has to be, you can impeach him. And then you would have the committee of 9, I think that's what is provided for, reporting back, to the joint sitting, and then you would need a 2/3 majority to actually remove him.
Okay.
And I think there's also a complication.
I'm just going to jump in there, Muna, just to jump in, because I am happy and pleased to be able to bring in also from Harare Ernest Mudzenge. He's a political commentator and director of the Zimbabwe Media Centre. Ernest, we're just hearing from Muna the process that needs to happen to get impeachment proceedings underway against Robert Mugabe. On what grounds do you think Mugabe could be impeached?
All right, I think the issue of impeachment is an issue that is being discussed within ZANU-PF circles. And what they are saying is that Mugabe should be impeached because he has surrendered executive authority to his wife. They are saying that he has lost the capacity to make decisions, and he has instead been captured, and especially by his wife and the other people surrounding his wife.
Bright Matonga, the sacked Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa, let's take a look at him. He's been named as the new party leader. He is known as the crocodile there in Zimbabwe. What do we know about him?
He was sentenced to death when he was 18 years old for carrying out guerrilla activities. The only thing that spared him death was because he was underage. And from there on, he took part in the liberation struggle. He then, I think from 1977, he was President Mugabe's assistant and bodyguard, so to speak. He's a lawyer. He's been Minister of Security, he's been Minister of Defense, he's been Minister of Justice, he's been Head of Parliament, and now he was the Deputy President. So he's got vast experience in terms of management, finance, I spoke of finance, law, all those things. So I think at the moment, people were looking forward to him taking over as the next president.
People are looking forward, Bright, you say, to him taking over. Is that the case, or are they not worried that he is just going to bring them more of the same that Mugabe did?
Well, sometimes better devil, you know. But I think for majority of Zimbabweans, it's not a question of whether it's Emmerson or whoever. They just want to see a different president. You know, that's what people are looking forward to. I know you asked my other colleague of impeachment. The ordinary man doesn't understand the processes. The ordinary man, for example, now they know that president was fired. It gets into his mind. There's impeachment. it's the voting that counts the ordinary man. Once the MPs have voted to impeach, people don't care about the processes. The processes will follow whilst, he's somewhere out. This is the mood on, it's not my views, but this is what I've picked up from the street. They say, hey,
okay,
we don't understand this legal jargon, but what we know is that impeachment is, you have to go.
Muno, is that true, or might Bright be doing the Zimbabwean people a slight disservice there, saying they don't care about the processes and the intricacies of impeachment?
Well, I think that the processes would have to be followed if you are to avoid the coup label, and I think that's the issue at hand. And I think also as the process of removing Mugabe begins, they also have to remember that you also, I think, have to jointly start the process of removing the vice president, because if you look at the constitution, you find that when the president is removed, the vice president will be acting. So I think that you have to deal with both in terms of, and in the constitution is provided for that you can proceed against the president and you can also impeach the vice president.
Just picking up on what Muna says there, if you impeach the president, you also have to impeach the vice president. Does that mean that we're not going to see Mnangagwa coming up to be president?
Yeah, I think the people of Zimbabwe right now are so tired, and they are blaming everything on Mugabe. That is in terms of the economic hardships, and they would want to see someone else. That is the truth on the surface. But when you go deep down, the people are saying no to a system that impoverishes them. They are saying no to a system that abuses human rights. So that's what the people are looking at deep down. So at the end of the day, whoever comes must deal with the economic hardships, must make sure that the economy is mended, must make sure that people are able to work at least for something, must make sure that people get cash which they work for. Right now people work, they cannot get their cash in the bank. So that's what people want. They wouldn't mind the name of the person. They wouldn't mind who the person is coming from. What they want is someone who can at least better their lives. The socio-economic situation of the people is bad. So what is wanted is someone who is coming with a reform thrust. That is a reform in terms of the economic front and a reform also in terms of the political front, in terms of human rights.
So if that is what they want, they can then forgive Mnangagwa's alleged past, his past where he's allegedly involved in a crackdown on opposition in the independence years where more than 10,000 people were killed. They can forgive that, can they, if he can bring about the economic reforms that they want?
Yeah, the people are willing to forget that. But this is not to say that those issues may totally be buried just by the stroke of change of a leader. There will be need for processes that will heal the nation, because there are people, as we speak, who don't have who don't even know their relatives, who don't know their fathers, who don't know their mothers, who don't have birth certificates. So I think a kind of a truth commission will probably be needed. This is why civil society has been talking of a national peace and reconciliation commission.
Bright Matonga, just picking up there on what Ernest said just before we lost contact with him, he said that there needs to be a truth commission. We're talking further down the line there, aren't we? Immediately he said there needs to be reforms, there needs to be economic reforms in Zimbabwe. How quickly can they be put in place?
This is a process that has to be taken. There is a lot of anger on the ground, poverty, shortages. People can't afford basic amenities, electricity, the basic things. So it's very difficult. So whoever is going to be the next president has got a lot to do. It's a process that will take some time, and it has to be an inclusive process. I don't think rushing to, this is my personal view, I don't think rushing to have elections will solve things. No, definitely not. There's a healing process that needs to be done.
Does this open the way, if I can just jump in there then, if you're talking about a healing process, does this open the way for a unity government, for the opposition to come back in to sit in Parliament?
You know, we need, if there has to be a government, I think it is prudent to involve everybody because the whole thing has been a mess. Unfortunately, at the moment, the opposition is not very strong, and which will leave room for ZANU-PF to win again elections on a landslide scale. But I don't know after this whether that is going to happen. But he or she, whoever is going to take over, they have to include everybody. They have to, you know, Zimbabwe is, we're becoming like North Korea. You know, no one wants to come to Zimbabwe. It's a very bad tag. You need investment. You need, if you invest in Zimbabwe or in a country, you want to be assured that, you know, the return on investment, you can repatriate your dividends. In Zimbabwe, it's not clear because there is no money. The forex that you want, you can't get it. But for some reason, if you go in the streets, you can find your US dollars, and that's not the way to run an economy. It's only the few privileged who are accessing the foreign currency. So who would invest in such an environment where people are saying, you know, the people don't trust you, the army don't trust you, foreigners don't trust you, your neighbors don't trust you anymore. So we are in a catch-22 situation. We are in a big mess, if I can put it that way.
Muna, would you agree that with that you are in a big, that Zimbabwe is in a big mess, but that there is an opening now for a sense of optimism, yes, that things can be put right?
Yes, I would agree that. You know, the situation in Zimbabwe is very difficult for Zimbabweans, and I think that this is really a big lesson in terms of African states, that you cannot have a monarchy-style kind of government, that you cannot, you have to have renewal. And the emphasis on term limits, this would not have happened if, in fact, Mugabe did not stay in power for all these years. And I also agree that going forward, of course, it would be necessary to look at the past in terms of trying to deal with the, you know, all the issues that brought Zimbabwe down. Whether Zimbabwe opts for a truth commission or it, you know, does something else or prosecutions, that is up to the Zimbabweans to decide. But they have to deal with the past. And then after that, I think they have to focus on creating institutions that are going to ensure that, in fact, human rights are respected and that there is participation by all in governance. And that's when, of course, you begin to come up with the correct policies that my colleagues are mentioning, that are necessary to grow the Zimbabwean economy.
Ernest, we've just got a minute left. Last word to you. Mugabe still commands a level of respect in Zimbabwe, doesn't he, as father of the nation? Do you think his legacy is going to be more hero or villain?
Okay, I think Mugabe, yes, he has done a lot for this country. We cannot wish him away just like that. He contributed a lot to the liberation of this country. He did some work, I think soon after independence, you know, the socio-economic agenda in terms of education and health, the building of the clinics, the building of schools. And if you look at Zimbabwe today, obviously we are now losing out, but we had a very good literacy rate. And Mugabe did something for the nation. But somehow, I think at the turn of the 90s, there were problems. And these problems moved on to kind of dent his legacy. So he did something, and he deserves to be recognized as the founding father, one of the founding fathers of Zimbabwe, despite his mistakes. So what is important, though, when we are looking at that, his legacy, is that he should simply step down. He should bow down aggressively so that people will not inflict further harm.
There we're going to have to leave it. Ernst, I'm going to have to jump in. That's certainly going to be a topic we will be revisiting. These are interesting times indeed for Zimbabwe. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Bright Matonga, Muna Ndulo and Ernest Munzengi. And thank you too very much for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, that's AlJazeera.com. And for further discussion, do go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Laura Kyle, and the whole team here. Bye for now.